Yo, good evening. Good evening there, old buddy, old pal, Doc. How you doing,
Glenn,
Doctor
how are you?
Doc? So, y'all, we're here tonight to talk about something that is near and dear to my buddy Doc Shaw and my eyes. Well, just our past, our present, our future. We were both combat corpsmen, and we hear some stuff going on right now that is, I don't know, breaking my heart. What about you there, Doc?
It's sad to hear. Um, wow, I'm almost speechless because just the comments, the feedback. Uh, if you haven't been there or you don't care, you just say random crap.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
it totally unnecessary. The feedback that has been stated. They're not there long enough. If you don't know, you haven't served, you haven't been a part of anything, you haven't given back to the community, much less. Um, but you're all about making the world a better place or making this country better. What better way than to make this country better than to give back, to serve? Um, and I'm just, I'm flabbergasted. I'm disappointed to a high degree, and I can't believe that you would treat our members of the military in this manner. So it does hit me to the core.
and so what he's talking about hitting him is we're talking about our president saying that the USS Lincoln, which has been 200 and what, I think 61, 62 days at sea now, over 9 months at sea, only one port visit, constant combat operations. And families are saying, hey, we've got family members not being fed properly. They've now been pushed to their mental limit. And when President Trump was asked about it on the tarmac today, he said, "What did he say, Deloy? You just said it.
You
What'd you
just
say?
said, it's not nearly long enough,
Not nearly long enough. Nine
or
months.
something to that extent.
Yeah,
I
no, he said it wasn't nearly long enough. So we're talking about a man that I like to call Captain Bone Spurs, because did he serve in combat? No, he got five deferments. So that meant five times someone else had to go in his place for his bone spurs that his podiatrist wrote up once his dad paid him off to write it out. What do you think about that?
well, if you want to take it a step further, I mean, how often are you going to church? How often are you talking religion?
Yeah,
Um, which has never happened before, but that's what we have. That's what the majority put in office. So it's you got to hit rock bottom before you can come back up.
man. Now, so the question is, are we at that point yet? Do you think?
We're getting there. We're getting there. People are starting to see the light, especially the supporters. Um, I mean, I am in a I'm in a place where, like I've always served from the get go. You don't have to like the person, but to respect the position, and that's where I'm at now. And it's my guy. I I don't have to like it, but it's my guy. I gotta do my part. I'm not gonna give up. Uh, I'm gonna
Well, and
continue to do
so
my job.
and that's why we're here, right? Because um, we've got 5,000 sailors and Marines on one aircraft carrier. Now, the problem is, folks are not talking about all the other ships that are always there with that aircraft carrier to keep it safe. So you're going to have destroyers, you have cruisers, they're going to have more folks in total than these 5,000 sailors just on that carrier. And carriers, when it comes to the Navy, they're luxury liners when it comes to, they're still, it's still a hard job being on a carrier, but destroyers out there at the same amount of time,
Hmm.
less accommodations, no real gyms like they have on the carriers, no real movement areas to move around like you really have on the carriers. So you got these destroyers with 300 some people, cruisers. Remember how many they have? Maybe 400 some. Not, a little bit more than destroyers. You're going to have some submarines out there. They're all right there with that aircraft carrier. And if it is an amphibious readiness group, then you've got Marine ships there. Well, Marine transport ships out there too, with sailors and Marines on.
Hmm.
But we definitely know they have cruisers, destroyers, submarines staying out there with the carrier to keep the carrier from being taken out. And all those people are also not getting port visits. So that's, 1 day ashore or one port visit with 2 days ashore is what they've had total in all this 9-month amount of time. And tonight, the United States Navy is telling grieving families they're wrong about what's happening on their own ship. Now, I spent 24 years in the Navy, and about half that time was as an independent duty corpsman. Before that, Deloy and I were both line corps, regular, 8404 quad zero corpsman. Then we became 8425. That was our designation. But before I was an independent duty corpsman, I was a combat corpsman with the Marines in combat. Old patch here, reminiscent of that. And Deloitte, you served with the Marines too, also, right?
I did. I was in Okinawa, part of the group. So I did that over there. Then I was at Camp Lejeune, part of the group. So Force Service Support Group. So 20 years, 8 months, 22 days consecutively. So I'm proud of that. So
a big part of my career that I'm really proud of is when I was able to talk people off the ledge, because I've sat with sailors, at 0300 in the morning and talked to them off a ledge, literally, and figuratively for hours, upon end, before while the sun was down, and we were still talking when the sun came up in order to keep them from hurting themselves. And this happened more times than I want to count in my career, but I can count it. I can also count one time when I didn't recognize the signs before I was an independent duty corpsman, and I was a junior corpsman with the Marines. Well, when Joe was senior line corpsman, so I was E5 at the time. There was a Marine that was in our battalion, but he wasn't, somebody that I was in my platoon or company that I worked with on a regular basis. But I missed the fact that if maybe I talked to him a little bit longer one day, and when he stopped me in passing,
mm-hmm.
maybe it would have come up, and maybe he wouldn't have jumped off a pier in Oceanside, California, and killed himself. As a E3. And that haunted me ever after, and still does to this day. So, so when I tell you that this story matters, y'all, Shaw and I, we need you to understand. I'm not reading this cold. We're not just talking about this cold. We're talking about memories that will haunt us for a long time to come, and we don't want to see anyone else haunted in that way. So, y'all, this is the Hillbilly Think Tank with me, Spencer Keck, and tonight with my special guest, Doc Shaw. Welcome. I'm the educated hillbilly. No, that's not an oxymoron. Don't call me a moron.
We are all created equal.
There have been educated, erudite, and emancipated hillbillies here in Kentucky ever since my kith and kin came to that Cumberland Gap with Daniel Boone and the other long hunters on their quest to find life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness right here. And with grit,
warmth of heaven
determination, this is where they established it. Now, like I said, I'm Spencer Keck, retired Navy doc, combat veteran, currently a public school teacher. I'm running for Hardin County Magistrate in District 3. And tonight, it's not political theater for me or for my buddy here, Doc Shaw, good friend Doc Shaw. This is the job that we actually did on a day in, day out basis. And so what we're going to talk about here tonight, I want everybody to listen, because we're going to give you a number if you need any help with an issue like this. But it's going to get real serious tonight. We're going to get real. And if you need some help, we'll have a number later to call about that kind of help. So segment 1, a deployment with no end date. And this is what's killing me. So the USS Abraham Lincoln and its whole it's either amphibious readiness group or its flotilla group. It left San Diego, California on November 21st. And that was supposed to be a routine Pacific deployment. I mean, most of them forward to those. Well, it got diverted to the Middle East to support the war against Iran. And it has never come home since then. And as of this week, that's more than, like I said, way more than 260 days at sea. We're at 9 months. And at one stretch, the Lincoln went over 200 consecutive days without a single port call. And the entire deployment, this crew has had 2 days ashore, 2 in Guam and in Oman. And to me, Oman's not maybe some people like that port visit, but that's not something I look forward to. Guam, isn't one of our American, just like Puerto Rico, it's a territory. Well, a retired Navy Vice Admiral told Newsweek that the Lincoln now holds what he called an unenviable record for underway time in recent Navy history. And that's not a hillbilly podcast talking. That's a 3-star. That's a 3-star admiral. And, little and I know that he's not going to just talk out of his wazoo, right?
Correct.
What do you think about that record?
I can tell you, you compare, being in the Navy to a regular job. You talk about, 8-hour days or 40-hour work weeks. But we're talking about they're working every day, and it's a Monday through Monday. There is no day off. There's just hours of sleep. There's probably an hour to go to church and feel that you're getting blessed in one way, shape, or another. But it's continuous. There is no time off. There's no leave. There's no vacation.
No weekend.
You're constantly running, and we're not talking 8-hour days. We're talking, they're going to push you to the max, 14, 15 hours. And then you're on alert because it's a hot area. And I'm not talking temperature. It's,
well, we are talking both that and the other type.
But the one I'm talking about is something may pop off. Some kind of missile or not missiles so much anymore. It's more drones. Keep an eye out on that. So you're kind of locked in. Have you ever been locked in your place for, more than 6 months?
Right. We're not talking COVID locked in where you can go out the backyard, look at the stars, pet the dog.
There's nothing.
Order your favorite food from, delivery. No.
Mm-hmm. You may have a cell phone, but you're not really using the service because you're out at sea.
I never had a cell. Yeah, never had a cell phone.
You have limited internet, so you have a computer it's basically a brick because you're not connected to the internet. You're not
actually. They have a word for that. It's let's see, river. What was it called? Basically, when you have to go silent on the internet. They shut the internet, they shut it down, and they don't let anybody on the ship have any communications with their family, friends, neighbor, nobody off the ship. And this has been going on now for months on end, because
Mhm.
here's what the families are saying versus what the Navy's saying. That's our next segment right now. So then here is where it gets getting really ugly. Military Times and CNN have both reported this week on multiple incidents of Lincoln sailors. Well, they actually, it says, they were saying that they attempted. No, it's actually now we know there are sailors that have jumped overboard. One of my favorite military veteran podcasters, Valhalla VFT, he's claiming the number is 6. I'm pretty sure he's got a good source for that. But I was just watching and looking at other reports on the AP. We definitely know for sure of one, and it looks like others, right? They have jumped overboard. Now, if you've ever seen an aircraft carrier, we're talking hundreds of feet up in the air. You hit the water like that, it's like hitting concrete when you hit, it's like jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge.
I mean,
So
you may talk about feet above, from the ground, but how many stories? How about that?
there you go.
Stories.
There you go.
How many stories above ground is that for an
And so
aircraft carrier?
many,
It's a
many.
lot.
And when you were saying that, then that reminded me, of course, we're also not talking about a stationary object. We're talking about a ship that is steaming. It's moving.
Mhm.
It has huge propellers. So those propellers can hit someone also, right? That's always what you have to worry about, or pull you under at least to make you drown. The weight of the ship will make you drown. So in one case that's been confirmed by 3 U.S. officials to a CNN sailor went into the water earlier this month. That person was rescued within the hour wearing a life vest and was medically evaluated. The Navy itself is calling it a mental health episode. And another, a sailor on watch, physically grabbed a shipmate off the rail before that shipmate went over the side, with 2 more running to help hold on. This person was determined. Now, wives of deployed sailors have gone on the record. One told the Navy Times her husband tried to go overboard and is now on medical hold. And she said that he's scared. You know how that is, Deloy, because he thinks trying to get help will end his career instead of save it. And that's, I mean, again, I don't want to start crying here on the show, because we both know we've seen that before,
Oh
right?
yes.
People don't get help in the military because they're worried about their career being finished. That fear right there, that's the whole problem in one sentence. And it was the problem when we were on active duty, and it's still a problem. And especially when you have an administration that says things like the president said today on the tarmac, not long enough, that they haven't been there long enough. So that, I mean,
There are words for motivation, but that had nothing to do with motivation.
and let's just, folks, these people are sleeping in bunk beds that are 4 to 5 racks high. You've got about 30 inches wide to lie down on a mattress that's this thin, which is on top of metal, hard metal. You have about 22 inches from the bottom of what you lay on with that little mattress to an overhead, the bunk bed above you, which is, you get a metal above you, metal on the side of you, and then only one way out on this side. Also, when you're on the floor standing in front of that, what we call a rack, it opens up. It's called a coffin rack, because your bunk bed, actually the lid, what you lay on is actually a lid to where you store your only personal belongings. That's what we call a coffin rack. It opens up like a coffin and then closes like a coffin, like a chest. And so you got about this much room to store everything you need to live in. Your uniforms, your toiletries. You might have a stand-up locker that's going to be very narrow, only hold a few of your, say, things that shouldn't get wrinkled, like your dress uniform. And that's it. That's all you've got.
That's it.
And when I would roll over on my side, look how wide my shoulders are. I was literally scrunched like a taco, and I'm a side sleeper, right? So that is just, you're talking no breaks from that for 9 months. And the engineers, they often work 36 hours straight without a break. Because once we're in heavy evolutions, heavy operations, going into in and out of dangerous situations, they don't get to leave their post. They don't get to call in for someone else to do their job that day to get some sleep time. And that's where I would see the most mental breakdowns, when those guys would do that week after week after week. Physical breakdown, mental breakdown. Do that for 9 months, where your boss literally tells you if you have time to sleep, and they mean this, then you have time to sweep. And the boss means that. Their chief warrant officer means that. If you have time to lean, like you just take lean for a minute catch a breath, they said, then you have time to clean, and they mean that. So, I don't understand. I didn't understand when I was in the Navy. I had so much respect for the engineers because they're going down on a destroyer 4 or 5 levels in extreme heat. In normal situation, those engines are running around the clock. We're talking a power plant. We're talking about a floating power plant, literally. The engines are enormous jet engines. Think of all the heat that a jet engine produces. And then you got, 2 of those, wasn't it, Lloyd, on a destroyer, if I remember correctly? 2 jet
Sounds
engines.
about right.
Yeah. And so imagine all the heat of a jet engine. I have to go down there. My job, part of my job, many hats that I had to wear was going down and doing what we call the wet bulb, wet bulb thermometer checking to see what with the humidity and the temperature, what was the literal effect on the body. What would it, if it was 90, did it feel like 90 with the humidity, or did it feel more like 120? And I had to figure out how long someone could be in that space before they had to be given a break, and how long their break had to be out of the space to drink water. But when they came out, they weren't getting to actually be off. No, they had other work for them. So that's what we're talking about. People don't realize that. So what you were saying earlier, from Monday to Monday, and often 36 hours back to back, Monday to Monday, and those heat conditions, man. First Gulf War, I wasn't a corpsman. I was a deck seaman, similar hours. I might be given 4 hours to eat, hopefully shower, and then maybe within those 4 hours, in between eating, maybe get a nap, unless I was too stupid and thought, I'd really like to go have some entertainment that doesn't involve talking to the people that I'm next to. And if I went and watched a movie,
you got to remember the entertainment that these guys are having is, being able to wash their clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. If there was a movie on, if there was a movie on the TV, you had to watch what everybody else is watching. You're lucky if you ever caught a whole movie all the way through, but still, sometimes you just wanted that time for yourself. My ship on a destroyer, you don't have a chaplain, a preacher, like a carrier does. So you don't get that Sunday, call to worship or prayer. So again, we're saying all this because it is not surprising when people are pushed so far that they feel like they're going over the edge, and they do start breaking down mentally. I'm surprised that more don't. So when people did, I took it extremely seriously. I made sure they were on.
Did we freeze? We froze. Anybody still on there? No. Folks, I think we have technical difficulties. Yep. We lost the host. The host will, anyone still on, will be back. I'll wait for the instructions.
Well, y'all, I don't, that's twice now. That gets me worried that I've talked about things that are very serious and we have something like that happen. So my question again is how long is long enough? That is where I'm sitting with this tonight. How much can we put our servicemen and women through? We're talking about sailors and Marines that are being pushed beyond the limit that anyone should have to endure. And those sailors are enduring, time at sea that's just unbearable. And I know how it is. I had a captain when I was in the first Gulf War. He made a point. Well, actually, I don't know if it was him or if it was the powers above him, but we would go about 90 days at a time before we would pull into a port. And that was really, that was tough. So I can only imagine going basically just about triple that now. And that's not something that anyone should have to endure. And anybody who thinks that I'm just complaining for my fellow sailors and Marines, I'm not. I'm listening to what the sailors are saying. I'm listening to what the wives are saying, the spouses, the husbands, of these sailors, and we've lost some sailors. The administration is not trying to let us, know the truth, but we've lost some sailors. So these wives have gone on record, told us what's going on. We see that they also are going through food shortages, contaminated water, failing plumbing, mail that is not getting through. And the Navy's official response is that combat operations disrupted normal Middle East supply hubs. So leadership prioritized food first, then hygiene, then mail, and that the ship currently has clean water, working air conditioning, and healthy meals. Well, once again, like I'm saying, it's not just these carriers that are out there. There's other ships out there too going through this. And on the mental health question specifically, the Navy's answer that was given to CNN, Newsweek, CBS, and Military Times, almost word for word each time, is a flat denial. They say they have not identified any increase in suicidal ideation or suicide attempts aboard that ship. Now, Senator Richard Blumenthal, he's not buying it. Neither am I. He sent Defense Secretary Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath and Acting Navy Secretary Hung Cao a formal letter this week demanding a full accounting, supplies, water, mental health, deck safety, and exactly how many times this deployment has been extended. Navy leadership also met in person with roughly 200 family members in San Diego, California this past week. That's not a ship handling a routine deployment. That is a Navy trying to manage a trust crisis. And that's what we're here really to talk about. All right. So we've got an archangel saying, hey, bro, I can help you get your kick shared. Okay. All right. So thanks, archangel. Now, segment 3, what I know from the other side of this, y'all. That's what we're going to talk about right now, again, because I've been there. This has been me, the people that I was with. As an IDC, I know what it's like for your commander to be given very tough missions, to be given missions that push sailors and Marines to their limits. I've also seen how a good Navy leader can handle this. And I see that I doubt this is happening. So first, let's give two examples. First, let's give one, not of my own, but one I saw under administration 45. When this president had his first term, do you remember what happened to the USS Theodore Roosevelt? I have not forgotten. I have not forgotten how that commanding officer of that aircraft carrier begged, pleaded with leadership in the Navy, all the way to the top, Secretary of Defense, pleaded with them to help him save his sailors that were dying by the droves and being infected by the droves from COVID. And what happened? The Secretary of the Navy and Secretary of Defense back then flew out to that ship that was on deployment, fired the sailor, well, actually fired the commanding officer, who had, after begging and pleading for help for his sailors who were dying and getting severely ill on that ship, making them so, the ship was so beridden by COVID-19 that it was unfit for being at sea. There weren't enough people to safely man the ship. And he was fired for, once he didn't get the help he needed, he leaked a letter, or sent a letter actually to the press telling them what was going on. His men and women, his sailors and Marines, were more important to him than his career. That's leadership. Well, I've also seen a similar thing when I was on a destroyer. I would like to name the name of that destroyer, but basically I had an executive officer who later topped up. He became the commanding officer. When he was the executive officer, I thought he was the best executive officer I ever had. I actually liked him as a CO, but I wasn't there with him on deployment, which actually ended in tragedy, but that's another story. But when we were pushed to the limits like this, and he knew it, he knew that he was having to push the men and women to the limit. He knew that people were going to reach a mental breaking point, and he told me personally, Doc, if you know someone is reaching crisis level because we're pushing them too hard, too long, because we have to, you have my permission. Take them into your medical bay for 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it takes for them to get the rest and recuperation they need. That was real leadership. But what have we heard now? We have heard that the ship is lying to these family members, telling them that their family member is okay. And it turned out that was the sailor who jumped overboard and didn't get rescued. And yet the ship denied that anything was going on and told that person that their spouse was just fine. That is a crisis of leadership and a crisis of loyalty to our American servicemen and women. So I want to say this plainly as a corpsman, not as a candidate. Isolation plus exhaustion plus fear of career consequences is the exact formula that gets people killed. Doesn't matter if you're in a berthing compartment on an aircraft carrier or a trailer outside Elizabethtown. When someone is afraid that asking for help costs them their career, their family, their identity, they stop asking. And the people around them are left guessing until it's far too late. That's why he's scared to get help because of what it will do to his career, quote from that sailor's wife, is the very most important sentence in this whole story tonight. Not the water, not the food. That fear is the thing that actually kills people, and it's fixable. If leadership treats it like the emergency it is, instead of a public relations problem. Now, y'all, this is the time when I normally give you the steel man. Usually I'll give tonight I should give the Navy its due because they say there's a real argument there. But you know what? I don't care that the Lincoln was diverted into an actual war support mission, not sent out on a whim. I don't care. That's what they're saying. I don't care that the carrier presence in a contested theater during live operations against Iran is not something you can simply pull back because the deployment is running long. I don't care that ending a carrier presence mid-operation has real strategic and safety costs of its own. I don't care that extended deployments are miserable, but because I know that they are. What I really care about is that our government says they don't care about that misery. That's what I care about. I care that our government says they'll let these people be miserable, and our president will say it wasn't long enough. Because I care about the misery those sailors are experiencing. You can just tell us, oh, deployments are miserable. Well, we know that. But when you don't give people an opportunity to relieve themselves from the misery before you put them back in harm's way this long and under relentless work hours this long, then you know what? You obviously don't give a hoot about the troops. You just say you do as a punchline. But, we know, yeah, in wartime, things like this can happen. But the longest carrier deployment in modern history, this didn't happen like this during our last 20-year war that I was part of. We had some long deployments, but we got some relief. And when we didn't, we started suffering consequences when people pushed too much. And I had to be there to make sure they didn't take the step that they shouldn't take. Now, the USS Gerald R. Ford held that record for longest deployment for 326 days. But it's also, going to be fair to note, the Navy has not confirmed a precise number of overboard or self-harm incidents. And so we do know that there's definitely, for sure, one sailor that is never coming back after this. But like I say, Valhalla VFT reported 6 the other night. And it's obvious that others have tried to go over and did go over, but were rescued, but one was not rescued at least. And that number 6, I tend to think the Valhalla would not have said that unless he had his numbers right from good sources. Now, family accounts are compelling, absolutely. The Navy's going to try to say that's not an official casualty count. Well, you know what? It's official that when someone's family member doesn't come back from a deployment, that's official for me. So there's at least, they say, like I said, one instance of a sailor that was rescued within the hour, medically evacuated, and wearing a life vest when he went overboard. But that shows the ship's safety system was working, not failing for that type of thing. But wife not being told that her husband was never coming back, told that her husband was fine, even though she knew when she was talking to him via email and other ways that he said he was beyond his limit, then this is a dereliction of duty to our folks. So, all those points they try to make in the Navy. I'm a Navy man. I love the Navy. But when you had Navy leadership that cared more about making rank through their successful missions on the backs of, and even on the lives of sailors, and didn't have to be, that's a dereliction. So when they run out of road, for me, is this. None of them explain why the Navy's public answer to grieving, frightened families has been to say the problem doesn't exist, rather than to open the books. This is just a bridge too far. Back home in Hardin County, let's think about it. We've got Kentuckians on that ship and on ships like it right now. We've got veterans all over District 3 who did their own version of this. Me being one of them. Too many days away. Not enough support when they got back. And a system that too often waited until there was a body count before it took notice. We've been there. As your magistrate, fiscal court doesn't run the Navy, but it does run how this county treats the veterans who live here. Whether the VA clinic on Pear Orchard Road gets the local support it needs, whether we as a community actually check on families holding it together while somebody is deployed. That part I can do something about. That part is on me, and it's on us together. So my final take on this tonight is this: 260 days plus, with only 2 days ashore, a Navy publicly denying what families are living through in private. Whatever you think about the Orion mission itself, the way we treat the people we send to fight is not a partisan question. It's the only question that has ever mattered to me in this job. Now, I'm going to say this and say it clearly and closely. I love my time as a sailor, but I despised when I was on active duty and leadership let those down that were counting on it because they wanted to make a name for themselves instead of being able to stand up bravely as that commanding officer of the Theodore Roosevelt did when this president had his last time in office. So, people tell me, hey, there are sources like, that the saying that's the 6 that were killed instead of just the 1, all right, let's figure out, is it 1? Is it 6? No matter what it is, there have been too many. 1 is too many. A carrier has multiple MD doctors on board, have one at least independent duty corpsman like I was, multiple junior corpsmen, even going to have laboratory technicians as corpsmen, plenty of medical department personnel, dentists, all of us trained in the prevention of people hurting themselves. So they need on that ship to take a close look at what their protocol is for making sure that they don't lose any more sailors. So, I took suicidal ideation very serious when I was an active duty, independent duty corpsman. And I really wish that we would not need to have reports like this. But when we have a president who says on the tarmac that their time wasn't long enough in that theater, then that tells you where the rot's coming from, where the pressure's coming from, who it is that can actually help this or who can continue to make it worse. And for what? We haven't opened the straight up Ormuz to everyone, not at all. So, the fact that this is happening and we have so many callous statements being made about real American lives and real American suffering that is unneeded. Yeah, I'm not going to just sugarcoat this to try to make some people say, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's not. Absolutely not. So any sailor, veteran, or family member listening who's struggling, please urge you, call the Veterans Crisis Line. Dial at 988. Then press 1 or text 838-255. That's me, retired corpsman, asking for you to help your fellow Americans that are struggling. Y'all, this has been the Hillbilly Think Tank. And let's all take care of one another, love one another. Remember, everyone deployed right now. And remember that in Kentucky United we stand, divided we fall. It's not just words on a flag, it's the glue that holds us together. I'm Spencer Keck, the educated hillbilly, and this has been the Hillbilly Think Tank. Come to a fiscal court meeting, bring your hardest question, whether I earn your vote or not, we will get an answer together. I'll see you there. Bless your corazon as we remember everyone deployed and we keep thinking deeply Like I said, Doc Keck out. Have a great weekend.